A forest with tall trees and green brush. Text, protecting and growing a healthy forest by the National Park Service Inventory and Monitoring Program. Liz Matthews, botanist, National Capital Region Inventory and Monitoring Network.
The timescale in which forests change are much longer than timescales of a human life. Trees can live over 100 years easily, if not 300 or 400 years.
Text, forest health, forest monitoring. Scientists examine a marked out space of ground around a fallen tree.
So our monitoring is tracking forests for the long term so that we can see those changes in trees that are not going to happen in 10 years, 20 years, or a human lifespan.
Placing a round metal tag on a zip tie around a branch.
So for example, stressors for our forests are exotic plants, exotic insect pests. All of these things affect forest structure, and we'll be able to connect changes to these stressors.
Text, Gettysburg National Military Park Battlefield. Zach Belitho, Chief of Resource Management, Gettysburg National Military Park.
Forests matter in Gettysburg, essentially because it's a critical part of the cultural landscape. If you think of the Battle of Gettysburg, it was all about open versus closed. It was about topography, it was about terrain, so it was understanding how battle action took place on this landscape. And without a wooded environment, you're losing that component of understanding what someone had to do to make a decision to get from point A to point B. So if we know in the future, wow, we might not have any trees here, but then we also say, well, how will we tell this story? How will people understand what the narrative was? And I think that's when it clicked and people went, wow, we have to do something.
A man stretches a measuring tape around a tree. Text, Ken Fearby, Natural Resource Specialist, Rock Creek Park.
I think a healthy forest is really why we're supposed to be here. I mean, that's kind of our job. We're trying to manage for a healthy forest so that it will sustain itself into the future. That's the whole mandate of the Park Service. We have vegetation plots that are set up in the park, and we've been monitoring the change in vegetation over time since 1991 actually. And what we've seen over that time is a reduction in the number of tree seedlings and actually just the understory plants themselves, the herbaceous plants, forbs, the plants that are low to the ground. I mean, these have basically disappeared.
Pointing out into the forest. Text, browse line.
Well, I mean, a browse line is when you look out into the forest, you see nothing below like a certain level. If you look out, you can see about 4 foot above the ground, down to the ground, there's hardly anything green. If it was a healthy forest, you wouldn't be able to see through the woods at all. It would, you'd be able to see 10, 20 feet and then you'd see green. I mean, I can see 200, 300 feet into the woods easily here. So that's an indication that you have an issue with overbrowsing.
Deer nibbling on ferns and ground cover under the trees.
Deer are an important part of our forest ecosystems in the Mid-Atlantic until there are too many of them.
So what we've been dealing with probably for over 25 years now would be an overabundance or too many deer.
Well, if the deer population is too high, you're overbrowsing, then what's happening in essence is the forest can't regenerate. I mean, there's nothing to take the place of the larger trees when they die or when there's a storm and they fall over. So you need small trees, tree regeneration, to replace those larger ones. So in a healthy forest, you have different layers of vegetation. Well, man has removed all the natural predators that deer would have in a park setting, such as wolves, mountain lions, even bears.
5 deer grazing together.
That's led to overpopulation, larger numbers of deer that have taken advantage of the habitat.
Text, Becky Lonkeski, biologist, Catoctin Mountain Park.
Here at Catoctin, the deer population had reached a point that it was way above its carrying capacity.
Text, Catoctin Mountain Park, Hog Rock Overlook.
We were at over 120 deer per square mile. We had no forest regeneration. We faced a difficult decision. We had to bring the population numbers down.
We've had to step in and create a management option. And our management option is to remove some of the deer. We want deer in the park, they're part of the ecosystem, but we need to reduce the numbers so that we can reduce the impacts.
Examining a tree seedling.
Another 32-meter browsed.
So we have noticed a difference in the health of the forest since we've started deer removal. being that we do have forest regeneration of those species that we're looking for. We have the white oaks, we have the hickories, we have that mixed hardwood, deciduous type of habitat that we're looking for in a place like Gettysburg.
Small plants and shrubbery close to the ground.
Since we started deer management, we've definitely seen more tree seedlings, you could even call it a flush of tree seedlings. So 9 years ago, you would not have seen this tree seedling here. This little ash would have definitely been eaten by deer. We've found plants that haven't been found for sometimes decades in the park.
A small orange flower. Text, yellow fringed orchid.
Had never found the yellow fringed orchid before 2 years ago.
I think inventory monitoring in parks is totally worth it. The information that they find out really helps us to make a better decision on what we're doing. We're still learning things about our parks, and we've been around for over 100 years. So to me, that's an amazing effort in itself.
Text, tulip poplar seedling.
Our aim is to keep forests healthy for the future, and that's really challenging without knowing the current status and the trends of forests in all of our parks.
National Park Service logo. Text, cooperatively produced by the following inventory and monitoring networks: Northeast Temperate, Eastern Rivers and Mountains, Mid-Atlantic, National Capital Region, with the help of Catoctin Mountain Park, Gettysburg National Military Park, Rock Creek Park.